Hi there, my name is Olena Palatnik. I'm regulated Canadian immigration consultant of Palleonn Consulting Center based out of Morden, Manitoba. Today we're going to talk about the overview of immigration programs that show themselves as to be really efficient, working, and effective in terms that you're able to make it happen and immigrate to Canada, specifically with assistance of those programs. We will also discuss do's and don'ts in progress of these programs when you submit your application. And if you have any questions related to your personal chances evaluation on immigration on any of existing programs in Canada, you can message us. You can leave your comments below this video, or you can just schedule a consultation, the personal one, so that we can assess your chances and find the optimal immigration pathway for you and your family. So we're going to talk about the programs that seem to be easy in terms of the level of language that is needed first, then in terms of the speed of the processing, those that are easier and faster than others. We will speak about those programs that need nothing from you. I mean, like no English, no education, no experience. Yes, sometimes it happens that people are lucky to come to Canada not having anything like that, but something more important, and we will talk about that as well. So we will start from Morden. This is just an overview, a brief discussion for you just to understand what is the program about and to get a clue of whether you do satisfy the requirements or not. Morden is the city in Manitoba that has an exclusive opportunity to select immigrants and to support them during the process of immigration. So Morden, in the majority of cases, is looking for specific professions and occupations that are able to cover the needs of the city and the employers that exist here. Those of you that have work experience connected with hands, production process operators, welders, carpenters, painters, cabinet makers, woodworking professionals, construction workers, truck drivers, for example, something like that. You may have your English IELTS certificate at level 5.0 for each module, and in this occasion you can easily submit the application to a Morden community and they will consider you. There is no need in an express entry profile or any other credentials whatsoever. There is no need to do educational credentials assessment for this program. All you need is to have at least 2 years of recent work experience in the last 5 years within the occupation that is needed by the city. And on the official website of the city, you can find a constant and regular update of those occupations that are really in demand. Another stream is the express entry stream of Morden. It's when you are in the list of occupations that are in demand in Manitoba. For example, it can be a purchasing manager, or it can be a food service supervisor. It can be an IT support technician. In this occasion, when it's a labor that is done by your brains, then you will need a federal express entry profile in order to submit your application for the Morden support. This means that beforehand, you have to make your educational credentials assessed, you must create your express entry profile, you must have much higher level of English language in terms of IELTS, and it will be most probably higher than 6.0 per each module. Also, you have to consider the importance that under the federal skilled worker class, in order to get into the express entry pool, you must have 67 points for age, experience, education, and language of spouse sometimes, in order to enter the pool. So you have to count your points first, and secondly, you will have to submit the application to the city. In both occasions, if city decides that your application is pretty cool, they will invite you for a Skype interview. Further, they consider your candidature on the immigration committee, and if you satisfy all the requirements and they think you are a good fit for the city, you will be invited for an obligatory exploratory visit to Morden that you must do, at least the principal applicant. In terms of this visit, you will undergo the final immigration interview with an MP immigration officer and get an invitation to apply for Manitoba Provincial Nominee program with the community support, which will further take you around 3 to 4 months for the provincial nomination and approximately from 8 to 12 months for the federal processing towards a permanent resident status in Canada. So Morden is pretty flexible in terms of the fact that you are not entitled to wait for a specific time the program opens or closes. It is opened all year round. And the moment you satisfy the requirements, you have IELTS, you have work experience, you're ready to submit. If you fail to be selected in the first place, you have the opportunity to resubmit your application in 6 months or whatever the changes come into your life and your application becomes more interesting. For sure, Morden gives more value to those candidates that already have some kind of connection to Morden in terms of friends or relatives whatsoever. So that's about Morden. That's one of the pretty good ways to get your immigration, especially if you have specific skills in trade occupations and have IELTS with 5.0 and you don't want to bother yourself with raising your IELTS level whatsoever. The other option that may be interested in the pathway to get your permanent resident status is the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot. Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot is a pretty new program. We have 11 locations across Canada that are ready to locate you and select in terms of immigration process. 2 of those 11 locations are open now for applicants and others are coming in a row, and I think by the end of January 2020 they all will be pretty much open. So the first thing that you need is to find an employer and a job offer in one of those 11 locations. And the second thing, you must be selected by the city itself and get a recommendation from the city in order to submit your application for permanent residency. The hardest part is to find the employer. While some cities will have the separate website where you will find specific job vacancies and posting directly connected to this program. So that means that employer is not going to consider any residents of Canada for those positions. They consider only you, those who are located outside Canada. That makes it easy. You can submit as many applications and resumes as you want. At least you must have 1 year out of 3 years of work experience related to the occupation that is needed by that employer. If you succeed, you will go through the interview with an employer. Then you will go through the interview with the city committee. And if you're nominated, you can submit the application for the permanent residency. Additionally, all the employers will be anticipating you to come for the bridging work permit. While you're waiting for your permanent residency to finalize, you are eligible to come under employer support under the work permit together with your family members to start working already, not waiting until the end of your processing, and to contribute to this employer. The salary rate is pretty good. The median would be 15-16 Canadian dollars per hour at start. I think so. And the employers are looking forward to see you. And there are a lot of different vacancies. There are managerial positions, a lot of operators, especially we'll see, for example, in Altona, the printing company is looking for binding, whatsoever printing processing operators. Welders will be needed, truck drivers are needed as usual, all types of construction workers will be needed, and so on and so forth. You can monitor all 11 cities yourself and see who's needed, and you must understand the first thing that you need to find a job offer. Secondly, your English level is to be higher than 4.5 approximately. 4.5, 3.5, 4, IELTS general, and higher depending on the skill level of the occupation that you're submitting your application towards. Also, you will need your credentials assessment of your education. You will also need settlement funds, which is a normal thing for all programs, but that's another story. The program itself may take up to 5 to 6 months if you find an employer to come to Canada with a job offer, with a work permit, and it will take some 9 months more to get your permanent resident status and to switch from the temporary to permanent resident in Canada. When you get all this, you get the permanent resident status for 5 years. If you want to extend your permanent residency, you can do it every 5 years under condition you have lived in Canada for cumulatively 2 years out of 5 years. If you want to get a Canadian citizenship, you have to live in Canada for 3 years out of 5 years. You must have your IELTS, each family member, at least 4.5 overall, and you will have to go through the citizenship test of Canada. And on this occasion, you will get a Canadian passport in some 6 to 12 months after the citizenship application is submitted. Let's go further. Atlantic immigration pilot is pretty much the same as rural and northern, and it is also connected very strongly to the employer. If you do find an employer in Atlantic Canada, which is Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador, New Brunswick, you can submit an application towards permanent residency with the employer support out there. And the Atlantic immigration process usually takes approximately 12 months to finalize. The biggest part, of course, is to find a normal employer that will be ready to support your application, which is not the easy case there. And the salary rate out there would be lower than in Manitoba for sure. Atlantic immigration pilot includes the step that you have to find an employer, then the employer submits you for the endorsement letter of Atlantic Canada and of the province. And when you get the endorsement letter, you have an opportunity to submit the permanent residency application to the federal level. At the same time, you're also eligible to submit a work permit application in order to come earlier to the employer to start employment, and then to get your permanent resident status within Canada, not leaving the country for that purpose. There is also a New Brunswick Provincial Nominee program with employer support. If you have found the employer in New Brunswick, it may be an easier and shorter pathway to avoid Atlantic immigration pilot because it has big backlog right now. But to submit an application for the Provincial Nominee Program of New Brunswick, which may make it faster. But again, the first thing is to find an employer. You will also need educational credentials assessment. Your IELTS should be higher than 4.5, and that's it. Express entry, federal skilled worker class. Everybody know it. I'm not gonna tell a lot of things about that because you can find so many videos and information out there about express entry. The only thing that you just need to know as an overview among other programs, that in case you are pretty young, you have high level of education, and you have at least 3 years of work experience, skilled work experience, and IELTS at the level listening 8.0 and all the rest 7.0, you may be pretty strong candidate to avoid all types of employer support, provincial support, all this, steps that need to be gone through if you have lower level of qualification in English. Express entry is designed to make your process very fast. It usually takes from 3 to 9 months, all the process, from the moment your application is selected in the express entry pool. But you must ensure that when you enter the express entry pool, you have very good competitive chances, because if your score is 350 points and you see from the previous draws that the average level is 450, there is no sense to enter the pool unless there is a necessity and the requirement of the province that you do have this express entry profile. So just don't put this information into express entry profile hoping that with 350 points you will someday go through. You will not, probably, because since 2015 till present, almost 2020, the lowest draw was 415 points, so 350, 360 is not going to happen. Last but not the least, the program and the pathway that does not require anything from you, no education, no experience, nothing like that, no English, is spousal sponsorship. If you're lucky to have someone in love with you who apparently appear to be a permanent resident or a Canadian citizen, you can submit an application for spousal sponsorship, which has no requirements whatsoever as the economic programs do. So on this occasion, you must have genuine relationship for at least a couple of years and more. You must prove this relationship. You must be really, truly in love with the person who's living in Canada, and you can submit this application from inside and from outside Canada, whatever makes you happier, or whatever is eligible for you in terms of the visitor visa application and getting the visitor visa to Canada. Hope this information was really useful to you, and if you have any questions and would like some details on any of the streams, there are more than 70 pathways of immigration to Canada nowadays, and we're really open to service you through the process from A to Z, or to check your applications if you have already prepared them but you have doubts in that, to correct your mistakes, to give you our advice and recommendations. Welcome. We're here to ease your way to get to Canada.